Let's get started by thanking our wonderful sponsors who make this show possible every week. We can't thank them enough. Kids should grow stronger, but their myopia shouldn't. Certification is now open to all eye care professionals for Cooper Vision's brilliant Futures Myopia Management Program, featuring MySight One Day, the first and only soft contact lenses FDA approved to slow myopia progression in age-appropriate children. Visit coopervision.com for more information.
Vision Edge gives you less eye strain and reduced damage caused by blue light. We like to call Vision Edge sunscreen for the eye. It all starts with your highest level of visual performance, only achievable through scientifically proven Vision Edge.
Hello and welcome to the Open Your Eyes podcast. I'm Dr. Kerry Gill, the host of the documentary Open Your Eyes. Please visit the film's website at openyoureyes2020.com, featuring interviews with more than 50 optometrists from around the country, sharing information on eye care and eye disease. If you like our interviews, press like, subscribe, share, and hit the bell to get notifications of great new interviews. Also, please leave comments. What's needed by every living organism improves our mood, helps creativity, loved by everyone, but mostly underappreciated. I'm speaking about clean water and all its beauty. Today's guest, best-selling author of the book Blue Mind and renowned marine biologist, Dr. Wallace J. Nichols, PhD, called a keeper of the sea by GQ magazine, a water warrior by Aquatics International, and the godfather of water by Irish Life Health and Santa Cruz Waves magazine. Dr. Nichols has authored more than 200 scientific papers, and he's a sought-after lecturer and turtle expert. Welcome, Dr. Nichols.
Hi, how you doing? It's good to be with you.
So I find that what you have done so interesting because you took something that's pretty obvious and you took an obvious concept that people didn't even realize it's obvious. You know, how much pleasure we get both physiologically and psychologically from water. But I have to turn the tables on you. So what's your water?
Oh, good question. Today, my water is the Pacific Ocean. I can hear the ocean from where we sleep here in our home, and I think this has been a really difficult year for a lot of people. In our family, we got hit with the California wildfires and lost our home and everything we owned.
Oh boy!
And I've been really leaning heavily on the ocean, having it in our backyard, in this place we've moved to. So I'd say right now it would be the Pacific Ocean. But prior to that, a little creek called Mill Creek, where we got our water back where we used to live. So I'm going with Pacific Ocean for my answer. Yeah.
How did you get interested in this concept about water being so soothing from a physiological and psychological point of view?
Like you said, it's a pretty obvious and intuitive concept. A lot of people, when they hear the basic premise of my book, they say, well, that's so obvious. Why would you need a book to tell you that? But I, like a lot of people, in my childhood, I spent a lot of time in the water. I swam a lot. I was one of those kids that, I was the last one in the pool or the last one in the lake or the ocean. My mom had to say, hey, it's time to get out. And it was my happy place. And I was a pretty shy kid. I stuttered, and I was, I guess, you would call me an introvert these days. And in the water, I felt comfortable. I felt more free. I didn't have to deal with people asking me questions that, that I couldn't answer. And as I grew up, became a marine biologist, I got curious about the science behind that, that feeling. And this is my book. I wrote it, but I didn't want to write it. I wanted to read it, and I couldn't find it. And so that it kind of came out of a vacuum, really, if you think about it. Like when you've probably experienced this in your career, when you want something, you want a tool to exist, but it doesn't exist. like your film needed to exist and it didn't. So you made it. And that's kind of how Blue Mind happened. I wanted to read it and I wanted to put it into practice with my work for the ocean, but the book didn't exist. So I tried to get some other people to do it. I tried to give the idea away and I failed at that. And then it came back to me. A guy named Dr. Oliver Sacks, who's a great neurologist. I wanted him to write it. And he said that I should do it. He kind of commanded that. And 5 years later, I went to New York and brought him a copy of the book signed for him, and a little thank you note. So that's how it happened. I back ended into it. As you mentioned, I'm a sea turtle biologist. I've studied sea turtles for 30 years, and I kind of come at this question kind of from that point of view.
And when did you fall in love with nature as a whole?
Yeah, I guess, back in childhood, I can distinctly remember just time in the woods, time by the creeks, time at the Jersey Shore.
The Jersey Shore?
Yeah, I grew up in Bergen County, New Jersey.
Oh, no kidding.
Outside New York City, Westwood and Woodcliff Lake, New Jersey, before we moved to the Midwest. And any water, whether it was a reservoir or a creek or an ocean, I just loved being out there catching frogs and flipping rocks. And so it wasn't a specific time, but looking back on that, my childhood, it was just, I was fortunate to grow up at a time when we didn't have these electronics that we had video games like Pac-Man and stuff, but nothing like they have now. And running out the door first thing in the morning and not coming home till it was dark, and just being outside in nature and riding our bikes around was just how we grew up. So it's kind of I see a lot of kids that don't get to do that these days for a variety of reasons. And and it may be something that you probably deal with. Not to go on an aside here, but kids looking at screens all day is going to mess up their vision. They don't get to look around and look for birds at the tops of trees, or look off in the distance as much out in nature like humans have done for millennia. And that's changing us. And it's probably keeping you in business to some degree as well, sadly.
The sun, being out in the sun and being by the water is such an amazing feeling. And in your lectures, you talk about just taking a shower, and having the water run on you. It makes you able to create and think. Talk about how water helps you with creativity, because I know I have like my greatest ideas actually when I'm, excuse my putting an R at the end of idea, being from the East. I have my greatest, thoughts, and, I give lectures, and my lecture just goes through my head when I'm in the shower and the water's running on me. And it's like the fact that you're able to connect those dots is just amazing to me.
Yeah, a lot of people will agree with us in this conversation. Say you're right. I get clear thoughts when I'm in the bath or the shower or when I'm swimming. And I mentioned Dr. Oliver Sacks. He said he got his best ideas while swimming at Lake Jeff in New York, or in the YMCA swimming pool in Manhattan. And he used to hop out of the water and jot them down on a legal pad, and then hop back in the water and keep swimming. And so a lot of people will agree with this observation. And then the question is why? Like, what is it about water that does that? But first, before we go into that, I want to share a kind of a pro tip. If you can get a dry erase board and stick it to the wall in your shower, and then use it. So when you get those ideas, this is what happens to me. I get those ideas. I think that's a really good idea. I'll remember that when I get out of the shower, and I'll write it down. And then when I'm out of the shower, toweling off, going to write it down, I go, I don't remember. It's gone. But
It happens to me as well.
I'm sure it was the world-changing idea, but it's gone. So if you can and you don't want to bring your phone in the shower. If you can capture that idea on the wall before you forget it. The other option is our kids had this soap that was, you could write on the side of the bathtub with the soap. Get some of that. It's like a crayon soap, and just write it on the wall in the shower, and then take a picture of it when you're done. Just a little note to remind yourself of that brilliant idea you got in the shower, so you don't forget it. I think that's just a silly kind of pro tip. But really what happens, so we switch from red mind to blue mind when we get in the water, whether it's the shower or the bath, the lake, the river, the pool. And what I mean by that is red mind is, well, it's where you and I are right now. We're focused attention. We're using our prefrontal cortex. We're thinking, we're processing. It's where we spend most of our waking hours. We're looking at screens. We're solving problems. We're processing information, which could be language, visual information. We're keeping very busy. It involves some stress, some anxiety, a lot of distraction, and increasingly for modern humans, that's our life. From the moment we wake up, we look at our phone. Many people, the last thing they do before they go to sleep is look at their phone, and then they set an alarm on their phone, and then they start the process all over the next day. That's our new normal, in our modern society. Red mind. When you get in the water, you leave the technology behind. You generally leave the noise behind, the sirens, the to-do lists, and you get back to just yourself and kind of a cone of silence in a way, or blue noise, I call it. It's the sound of water. So you're in the shower, you're in the waterfall, you're in the pool, and all of those things demanding your attention disappear. If you're floating in the water, all the coordination of all the muscles in your body, you get some of that bandwidth back. So visually, auditorily, somatically, you get all this bandwidth, and it's just you and the water. Your brain doesn't turn off. It turns on in a different way that we refer to as blue mind, which affords the opportunity for creative thinking, for insight, for foresight, for future problem solving, for sort of self-referential thinking, the who am I, what am I doing kind of stuff. And that's a different mode. We need red mind. It's necessary. We don't put people on the moon without red mind. You don't win the game or win the competition. You don't really innovate without red mind, but you also don't really succeed without blue mind. And thinking back to when we were kids, we had a lot of daydreaming in our lives. It was just part of life. We had boredom, and in that boredom, we just sat and looked out the window. And these days, a kid's bored, they go to YouTube and they're not bored for more than 2 seconds. They have every song and every movie ever created at their fingertips. We didn't have that, so we got bored, and in that boredom, we got creative. And from that creativity, we invented a new game, or we built a fort. Thinking back on my childhood, that was how it was. And so water gives us that gift of, you could say, boredom. And in that boredom comes this different kind of bandwidth. And then we use that opportunity to have those aha moments, think more deeply about our lives, perhaps, or have a little moment to solve a puzzle that you've been working on. And so that's what's going on. That's one of the advantages of blue mind, among the many, is that creativity and that innovation that can happen. And you're not the first person to say you get your good ideas in the water. And Einstein did. He went sailing in a little boat on a lake, and the inventor of Instagram got that idea sitting on a beach in Mexico. And so a lot of innovators, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of artists and musicians. I'll give you one more example. Pharrell Williams, he wrote the song Happy. that you probably couldn't get out of your head that one summer.
Right.
He says he gets his creativity from the ocean. Um, that's amazing. He's a very creative man, and he says he got his creativity from the ocean growing up in Virginia Beach. And so the list is long of people, household names and otherwise, that are, like you and I, we find some creative juices flowing when we're in the water. Yeah.
How about advertisers, companies, they advertise using the ocean in the background.
That's a great observation. I've worked with a number of advertising agencies over the past few years, and they're onto it. And so Corona beer, for example, it's not the world's best beer, but they do some really great marketing, and they primarily use Blue Mind to sell average beer. No offense to Corona. And increasingly, you see, watch for this when you see ads. Pharmaceutical companies use Blue Mind. People jumping in the pool, people walking on the beach, to just basically symbolize in 2 seconds, symbolize health and wellness. So if you're jumping in a pool, you must feel okay. If you're walking down the beach, you must feel okay. And then financial services companies, wealth management companies, they also use Blue Mind for the same reason. It's the symbol that all is well, that your life is rich. And if you're standing on a cliff overlooking the ocean, or grabbing your surfboard and going for a surf, things are all right. You have a healthy life. And so that's the symbolism. And marketers, you're right, marketers are all over it. Yeah.
You talk also in your book and your writings and speaking about gray mind, trying to avoid gray mind. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So red mind is useful as much as it can be prone to anger and outburst and distraction, but it's very useful. But if you stay in red mind only, you will burn out. You will break down. Parts of your body physically will start to fall apart, and you will start to kind of lose that red mind edge that you need. And so that's kind of what you want to avoid. You want to avoid gray mind, which is, we've experienced it a lot this past year. There's a lot of gray mind going around, and there's also a lot of red mind. People have really had enough of this situation and the stress of the world in 2020. And you're seeing it a lot. And the American Psychological Association will every year they publish a report called Stress in America, which outlines the level of stress that they're seeing around the country. And it's on the rise. So anxiety and stress are on the rise, leading to mild or even severe depression. So you can make an argument that gray mind is not very useful. It's, as an employer, you don't want your staff to burn out. As a family, you don't want your kids to burn out. As an individual, you don't want to find yourself in that gray mind mode. Maybe the only useful part of gray mind is that it is your body telling you, you're done, dude. Take a break, take a seat. This is it. You don't have anything left in the tank. You've run to empty, you run to the reserve, and now there's nothing more for you to draw on. And it's your body saying time out or else. And so there's a point that you reach if you live in red mind, that you will find yourself in gray mind. And I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it as a goal. I recommend avoiding it, unless you're kind of a poet or a musician, and you find some of your most beautiful lyrics come from that mode. But I still don't really recommend it. Yeah.
E. Cummings, who was a famous poet, would speak about water. If you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of water poetry. There's a lot of water in artwork. Some of the, famous artworks depict water, whether it's Monet or others. And a lot of great poets write about water. A lot of musicians sing about water. A lot of great fun songs about boats and water. And but E. Cummings, has some poems that I enjoy. I used to read to my kids a lot of poetry that just kind of touches on this blue mind sentiment that we find ourselves in a sense in the water, that you find yourself, I find myself, but then when we go to the water together, as we sometimes do as couples and as families and with our friends, the social connection is enhanced. And I think his poetry hints at that it's almost a cliche that you go to the water's edge for special ceremonies, for honeymoons. But when we gather as a group, either as a pair or as a family or as a community at the edge of the water, it's a different dynamic than when we gather in a room, in the built environment. And so poets have always kind of described that, that important dynamic, that ritual going to the water. And again, I Blue Mind is not a new idea. I think it's maybe one of the oldest ideas. And it is codified in all spiritual traditions and all sacred texts that this idea, whether they get into the science of it or not, there it is. You go back thousands of years. All of the poets have written about the importance of getting together by the water, of going to the water to soothe your soul. The Judeo-Christian tradition, the 23rd Psalm, which is basically a song, which is basically a poem. So all the Psalms are basically poems, song poems. King James wrote one called the 23rd Psalm. And it's the one that says, when the crap is hitting the fan, get your butt down to the water. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you should fear no evil, Lord, on and on. It says, when you're having a bad day, go sit by the water. It will soothe your soul. And all spiritual traditions have something just like that in them, that says, if you're hitting that red mind wall, don't burn out. Go to the water. Let it restore you. That's ancient wisdom that we now have modern science reminding us of it, not teaching it because it's been around for a while, but reminding us that this is true. Here's some research that backs it up. Now, what are you going to do with it? And the poetry has been there for a very long time. Herman Melville's great novel, Moby Dick, if you've read it or not, read the first page. The first page basically says, if you've had a lot of red mind and you're feeling kind of gray mind creeping in, Melville calls it November in my soul. That's how he describes gray mind. He says, it's time to go to sea. It's time to get on a boat and shake off that November in your soul. It's right there. It's in one of the great novels, if not the greatest novel of all time. There it is. Blue mind, red mind, gray mind. So the writers and the poets and the musicians have been onto this for millennia, and now science is catching up with the poets, I guess you could say.
If you ask 100 people if they're going to go on a vacation and they want to relax, I bet 80-90% would say, I want to go to a beach. I want to go to a place where there's water. And that kind of brings us to the science of water. You study the science of water. I know a lot of my audience is very interested in that. What is the science? What does it do to our hormones, our neurotransmitters? If you could explain some of that, how it affects, oxytocin and some of those things.
So, I think that there are two broad components. So let's just back off for a second. When we talk about water, you probably remember learning the water cycle: solid, liquid, and vapor or gas, the three states of water.
You know, I interviewed Gerald Pollack. You
Oh,
know
you did?
Gerald,
Yeah.
and we talked. He talked about the fourth phase of water,
Fourth
the gel
phase.
phase of
Yeah.
water. I don't
Yeah.
know if you have ever connected with him, or if you guys are
I,
buddies. You
it,
know, because
we've crossed paths, and his work comes up a lot. Yeah.
so that yeah, I appreciate you bringing this up.
It, and part of what we're doing, I think what he's doing, and what we're doing with Blue Mind is that water cycle that you learned in school in third grade or whenever it was. It needs to be updated. We need a better version of it that includes this new science, so that all kids everywhere in the world learn the new science of the water cycle. And what I would add to it is that during all of those phases, all those forms the states that we encounter water in, it isn't just for hydration and hygiene, and it isn't just ecological and economic benefits. There's also vast emotional health benefits that occur. And it's true for snow and ice as well as fog and clouds. You think of the days perhaps that you spent just looking at the clouds and seeing the shapes and being mesmerized by fog, uh, watching the snow fall. I know there are days when you dread the snow and the ice, and there are days that you dread the rain. But even those days, you look out at it and you're like, it's beautiful. I mean, it's the whole concept of a white Christmas, of going out and having it be a blanket of quiet on your world, and all of the poetry in that. So that's part of the water cycle as well, and that's the science that you're asking about. And so water in all of its forms, and all of its categories. So whether it's wild or domestic, the water in your home or the water in the river, or it's urban, it's in your town, it's in a fountain or a waterfront, or even virtual poetry and art and film and music depicting water. And all of these forms, and all of these states of water, what they do for us is biological, but it's emotional. And so the two broad categories of what happens. One is what water takes away, what it precludes, and then there's also what it offers us. So we talked a little bit about it earlier. Water disallows your technology, generally speaking. Your iPhone, your iMac, your laptop computer doesn't like the water. So you got to leave it on the shore. You got to leave it. You don't bring it into the bathtub. Some people do, but I don't recommend it. You don't take your smartphone into the shower. It's a bad idea. Um, you don't bring it into the pool. So the water kind of takes away all that chatter and all that noise and gives you the opportunity for restoration. So it simplifies the auditory and visual input that has become just pervasive in our world. There are kids that never experience solitude in their entire life. That's amazing. To not know what solitude is, to never know what privacy is, because there's always a device recording your clicks, your whereabouts, your voice, and more. So to never experience solitude and privacy. So one big category is what water takes away. Takes away that surveillance, takes away that information overload. And then the other side of it is what it gives us. And it gives us buoyancy, right? It gives us its sound. It gives us its rhythm. It gives us this visual input that psychologists refer to as soft fascination. And so from a visual perspective, it's not conveying words, it's not conveying a lot of information, but somehow, and your insights into this would be incredible, somehow it holds us. Somehow it's not boring. So if I said, look at that wall, it's painted blue, isn't it nice? You'd say, yeah, that's nice. In about 10 seconds, you'll start to get bored of that blue wall. But I say, look at that view of the ocean. Isn't it nice? And you say, yeah, that's really nice. I know people who will sit and watch it for a week and call that a great vacation. They'll pull up their chair on the beach and maybe they have a book. They don't really get around to the book. They'll just stare at the water and they will claim that it never gets boring. It's this thing called soft fascination. The sound of it as well. Looking out at it, and the occasional bird, the occasional boat, the occasional dolphin, uh, just holds us there. And so it's visually interesting, but not, it doesn't require us to do a lot of work to understand it. There's a little bit of information, there's novelty, it holds us there, but it doesn't overwhelm us with processing. So it's not language, it's not words, it's not ideas that we need to interpret, but it holds us in its fascination. So that's what water gives us. And in that place that I refer to as blue mind, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it your happy place. I call it blue mind. Our heart rate starts to slow. Our skin temperature cools a little bit. We become entrained in the rhythm of the ocean or entrained in the sound of the river. And when we do that alone, we kind of synchronize with that environment. It puts us in a calm place where cortisol levels drop, the stress hormones. Feel-good hormones increase. So you get some serotonin mixed with some oxytocin and even the dopamine hit, which is kind of the addictive, the chemical of addiction, which to me, this is a healthy addiction. And so what I've learned from the neuroscientists is if we can harness the chemistry of addiction as a force for good, we can change the world. It's not all about getting rid of that, that feature of our bodies and our lives. It's about harnessing it. So rather than being addicted to casinos, you become addicted to cleaning up beaches and helping people. So it's using that reward structure that we have, in our personal chemistry, and harnessing it as a force for good. So in that blue mind state, we're getting rid of a lot of stuff that doesn't like the water. You're getting rid of a lot of the sound and the sights that keep fill out all that chatter that's normal life. And you're getting this visual soft fascination, this auditory rhythm. And the sound of water, turns out, the research on sound, turns out it's a great way to mask noise. So the sound of water is the best sound to mask human voices. So when you're sitting by a fountain in the city and you want to have a conversation with someone, you sit close to them, and that sound of that fountain is going to mask everybody, all the other conversations, giving you this kind of cone of privacy. So those are just a few of the things I describe in my book, but the upshot.
Sleep. How about sleep? The
Oh
sound
yeah,
of sleeping.
one of the top sleep apps, is just sound, and the top sounds that people utilize to fall asleep are water. So it may be the sound of rain. And I'll describe it now, and you may fall asleep listening to me. The sound of rain is soothing. You just close your eyes and imagine that nighttime rain that just makes you feel so happy that you're in your bed and safe and warm, and it helps you sleep. It's a soothing sound, and it masks all of the distractions. The sound of the ocean. I can hear the ocean from my house if I'm very lucky, and on those rainy nights with ocean waves, it's just so nice to sleep. And then the sound of a river or a creek, a babbling brook. So those are the top 3 sounds that people choose to help them sleep in a non-pharmaceutical way, non-chemical way. It's our brain making our own chemistry. And it's not surprising, really, to me that those would be the top sounds. That's just blue mind in action. Another, when you ask about sleep, I work with a lot of veterans groups and men and women who are carrying a lot of post-traumatic stress. And we do various kinds of therapies in the water. So it might be kayak therapy, fishing therapy, dive therapy, or surf therapy. And one man that I met got off of his first surf session. He learned to surf. And he said, that night, I slept the best I've slept in 3 years. And he said, I have not really slept in 3 years because of my experiences. And he said, what a gift. Sleep. What an amazing gift to sleep, 6, 7, 8 hours. And he said, the ocean put me in that place. And, this group stays at a hotel in Santa Cruz, and they can see and hear the ocean, and then they're in the ocean all day. And the combination of exhaustion, physical exhaustion, and the ocean, exercising in the ocean, helped him sleep. And he said, best sleep in years. And that sleep is the basis of health. It's when we reconcile and compile and prune our cognitive input. We make memories and we jettison stuff we don't need. And you need it. Your brain needs to sleep. It's a part of our health regime, is to sleep well. And
How
so
about end of life hospice type patients that that are stuck in people that are stuck in a nursing home?
Yeah. So I would say, from both ends of the spectrum of life, from birth to death. So there's a highly recommend the practice of Blue Mind for pregnant women. If you can give birth, childbirth in water, that's great. If you could labor in water and then hop out, but during pregnancy and after pregnancy, spending time in the water, exercising, moving is very healthy, should be prescribed or encouraged. And then at the end of life, when your body's slowing down, when gravity is taking its toll, if you can be in the water more, do it. If you can help someone who's in that stage of life, get in the water and spend time by the water, do it. For all the reasons we've described. If end of life is stressful, it's scary, it's uncertain. If you can help people, your loved ones in particular, reduce that stress, again, that's a gift. And then if you're helping your loved one die, and we all will do that, that's stressful for you too. If you're a caregiver, if you're a hospice professional, helping people die is a stressful career, and thank you for it. And especially now, it's challenging. But take care of yourself. Practice. If you're a health practitioner, especially dealing with patients who are dying, don't fall in the gray mind. We need you. We need you strong. So the practice of Blue Mind is for health practitioners. It's for families of patients, and it's for the patients themselves. But I talk to a lot of people who say that they grieve in the water, they grieve by the water, they cry in the shower. So take your pain and sorrow and your grief, and take it to the water. Take it to the beach. Take it into the bathtub. It's a good place to process it.
Macular degeneration is a leading cause of vision loss, with 15% of Americans being at risk or already affected. Scientific evidence proves that by using mesozeaxanthin, lutein, and zeaxanthin together replenishes the macular pigment and promotes healthier vision. This formula comes in only one product, MacuHealth.
Thank you for tuning in to the Open Your Eyes podcast. If you like the video you're watching, please hit the like button. Also, hit subscribe for weekly new episodes of the podcast, along with pod winks and bonus content. All right, let's get back to the show.
You talked about a story of a woman who was who loved the water, who was in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
They took her to the water. If you could tell that story.
Yeah, Jarmila, she was a beloved UCLA professor, and retired, and was an immigrant, and she's a Czech woman, and she ended up in a nursing home and ended up very alone. And my friend Greg and his wife met her, or maybe knew her, knew she was in a nursing home, went to visit her to check in on her, just as a nice gesture. And they said, Jarmila, what do you want to do? And she said, I miss the ocean. And so Greg figured out, he got a van, got her, Jarmila, in her wheelchair in the van, and they went down to Santa Monica and went out to the Santa Monica Pier and wheeled her out there. And, at this point, she'd been in a nursing home for years and kind of lonely, and end of her life. And Greg brought her out there, and she stood up out of the wheelchair, and she shuffled forward and grabbed the railing and stood at the railing and just, let herself be washed by the sound and the view of the ocean. And later on, Greg said, hey, Jarmila, I didn't know that you could even stand anymore, let alone walk. And Jarmila said, I haven't had anything worth standing for in a long time. And that gives me chills. We love our water, no matter who we are, where we are in the world. And Jarmila's water was that ocean that she missed so much. And it rallied her in her last days to stand and walk. I mean, that's awesome. And so if there's a loved one in your life that wants to see their water one more time before they're done, do what you can to get them there. I mean, really, there's probably some logistics to it, especially nowadays. But wow, that's, the water we love it may be our best friend. And so, offer that to those in your life that need it.
That's it really is a beautiful story. How about the mountains? They almost give the same feeling as water.
Yeah, I occasionally hear people say, well, I read your book and I'm more of a mountain person than a ocean person or a water person. And usually what I say is, when you're in the mountains, do you ever look up and enjoy the clouds? Those are water. Clouds are water, but nothing else. They're 100% water vapor. And when you're in the mountains, do you ever sit by a creek or a lake and enjoy it? Sometimes when you go for a hike in the mountains, is your destination the water? Or when you're in the mountains, do you ever enjoy the snow? That's water too.
Right.
And then they kind of go, you're right. Wow, I love the mountains, but it's not the rock entirely. It's also the water in the mountains in all those forms, in clouds and fog and lakes and creeks and rivers and snow and ice in the mountains. And so it really is blue mind. And I extend the concept of blue mind to include nature in general, forests and wetlands and meadows, because in fact, those trees are mostly made of water. And I experienced that with these wildfires. If you remove all the water from those plants, you're left with ash. It's the water that makes them beautiful and alive. And so even a forest is, millions of gallons of water in those trees. They're made of water, as we are. And so, it's blue mind extends to the green spaces as well as the watery places. Mm-hmm.
My greatest memories as a child, as an adult, is when I've been near water, riding my bicycle as a little kid. And it's actually in the movie, along the beach in Cape Cod, yeah. And, being with my current wife, and, the feeling of being with water. Talk about the nostalgia of water.
Yeah, there's the word nostalgia. Sometimes people downplay its importance and think maybe it's a weakness to be nostalgic. I think it's on each of us as adults, to make sure our kids, the next generation, our kids, our grandkids, our nieces and nephews, and any kids that in our neighborhoods, form nostalgia for beautiful places like you're describing, your nostalgia for water, for watery places, for the forests, for the parks, also for good music and good food, rather than forming nostalgia for a brand or a device that will be gone perhaps when they're adults. So it's so important that our nostalgia is not co-opted by people who want to co-opt it to sell us stuff. I understand why they do that, because it works. And I'm not saying that they should stop because they're going to keep using nostalgia to sell us stuff. But it's up to us to make sure that we all have our nostalgia deeply connected to good music and good food and great places. And water, man, water is like a nostalgia factory. You know, like you ask people these questions about their childhood, and if they had a water connection, they'll get very nostalgic. You know, whether it's riding their bike by the water or jumping in a creek or swimming in a pool. The memories we make in the water, near the water, and on the water are so rich, and they go so deep. And it's for the reasons we described earlier. All the distractions kind of strip away, and we have these intense social experiences in the water. And I'll tell you one story. When my kids reached a certain age, I have two daughters, they're both teenagers now. When they reached a certain age, they got too cool for dad, I guess is the simple way of putting it. And they come home from school and I'd say, "How was your day?" And they'd say, "Fine." And I say, "What did you do?" And they'd say, "Nothing." And that's all the information I could extract from my own kids. And then we got this cedar hot tub on the deck, just a soaking tub, no jets, nothing fancy, no lights. Just this big wood classic cedar hot tub. And we made it a ritual to sit in it before bed, like late at night. And in the water, they would just talk. It was like magic. And I never mentioned my strategy to them because I didn't want to wreck it. But I'll say it here: it's a good parenting tip, or for anybody who wants to open up a conversation. I couldn't. They would just talk. We get in the water and they just talk, and we talk about it now. They loved those sessions. You know, it'd be raining outside. We get in the hot tub outside and get rained on, but be in the hot water. It'd be a starry night. The owls would be out, or whatever it was. It'd be a hard day for everybody. We get in the hot tub and it was a better day, and we'd talk. And those were probably the best conversations I ever had with my kids. We're just sitting in the water. And that built some of their nostalgia, you know, those moments of, you know, family time, sitting in the hot tub. And so nostalgia is important. It isn't a weakness. It isn't somehow backwards thinking. It's our history. And if you can create, you know, things that you're nostalgic about, that are good things, you know, water, you know, it's one of the reasons people protect and restore lakes and rivers and oceans right now, is that they have some degree of nostalgia for that river when it was clean and healthy. And they want to maintain it that way. So I think nostalgia is a powerful force. Yeah.
How about float tanks that have become very popular?
Yeah, we almost got. I was almost going to mention float tanks earlier, so I'm glad you brought it up. So back in the 70s, float tanks started happening, and they were kind of a counterculture thing, and got labeled. There was a film that came out, you may remember, called Altered States, that kind of gave float tanks, kind of sensory deprivation tanks, got a bad name. But in the last, you know, I'd say 10 or 15 years, they've really had a resurgence. And what we see is float tanks popping up all over the world, in small towns and big cities. We're starting to see pro athletes. So the Chicago Cubs put a float tank in the locker room the year they won the World Series. The New England Patriots, many members used to float. The Golden State Warriors, Steph Curry and his pals, during their championship runs. They would float in San Francisco. And it's like extreme blue mind. If you're not familiar with a float tank, the water, your body, and the air in this little capsule are the same temperature. There's about 18 inches of water. It's hypersaturated with Epsom salt, magnesium chloride. And so you're in this tank, the air is warm, your body is warm, the water's warm, but it's all the same temperature. It's not a hot situation, but it's warm. And you float like a cork. And you close the lid and it's dark and soundproof. And it's the most nothing you've ever experienced in your life. And you may say, well, that's boring. Well, if you're boring, it's boring. But if you've got something going on upstairs, it's coming out. And so, buyer beware. It's all you all the time. And you go in there for 60 minutes and it might feel like 60 years. And it's a different experience. And I always say, you need to, if you haven't tried it, you need to try it. And you really need to try it 3 times so that the first time you do it, it's kind of weird. You might be thinking the whole time you're in that tank, what the heck am I doing here? This is weird. The second time it's less weird. The third time you just go in, the routine, and you may actually get a deep, relaxing, you really hit that goal. But, creative people do it. Right. Navy SEALs use float tanks. It's just a de-stressing mechanism at its most basic, but it opens up doors to creativity and problem solving and, music writing and math problems, whatever you're working on. You bring it in there for 60 minutes, 90 minutes, or just do nothing, or just really, truly go with the nothing concept. And, it's the most nothing you've ever experienced. And in this crazy world of too much stimulation, that's a gift. 60 minutes
Sure
is really a
It
gift.
sure is. How else do professional athletes use water to benefit them in their athletic ability?
Yeah, so what we're mostly familiar with, the water therapies, the hot cold therapies, after a hard workout or after a hard training session or a really rough game, increasingly. And I can remember back, playing football in high school, that was being done for therapeutic reasons for all kinds of athletes. But I think what we're seeing, in addition to float tanks, what we're seeing is that workouts themselves are being moved into the water. So not just recovery of the mind and recovery of the body, we're seeing that the workout is now being submerged. And 2 big reasons: fewer injuries and higher resistance. So if moving your arm through air, your body through air, your legs through the air, there's minimal resistance. You still get a workout, but that's why you add weight. That's why you put weights in your hands, add weight to your vest. That's why we have to add weight to increase that resistance. In the water, just moving your arm back and forth is more effortful. So what we're seeing is a lot of, Oakland Raiders, formerly Oakland Raiders. A friend of mine used to train with them in a pool, and they basically bring their entire fitness program, treadmills, pull-up bars, weights, and they drop them in this pool. And these guys would have to dive down to the bottom of the pool and lift weights. And it just adds this extra level of strain, you could say, but also, the cardio workout is different. There's this pressure on you from the volume of water above you and around you. And then again, you're less prone to injury as you are on land. My friend Pianki, who's the trainer that does work with the Raiders, he also had a client who was 600 plus pounds. And he was a rapper, musician in Oakland. And when he he started training him to lose weight. And he said, when he got in the water, he felt like an angel. On land, he felt impossible. It's just because of his weight. It's just so hard to move, so hard to get a seat on an airplane, so hard to do anything, so hard to breathe sometimes. But in the water, this man felt like an angel. And if you've gone through your whole life feeling like just loaded down physically, and then you feel like an angel, and then a guy like Bianchi says, do some chin-ups, and you do the chin-ups because you're buoyant in the water. And he says, swim a lap, and you swim a lap. And he says, run on that treadmill, and you run on the treadmill in a way that you never did on land. That builds your confidence. So there's another component in the water, that the water supports us and it builds our confidence. And I've been told by people, I've heard this over and over again, that the warm water feels like a hug, feels like a whole body hug. And who doesn't need a hug these days? So
that's a tremendous concept. I love that. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. I never heard that before. That's unbelievable. And a lot of our seniors do water aerobics, and it's very therapeutic for them.
And it's fun. That's the other part of it. Like there's a playfulness to it. And if you can bring fun to your workout, there's a social element to it. Rather than going into the health club, putting on headphones and staring at the news station and getting more red mind in your brain.
Or gray mind, right?
Or gray mind. You don't need that. And if you can go and work out and be supported, hugged, have fun, and reduce the number of injuries, I think there's we'll see a lot of growth. I mean, you can basically take a whole CrossFit program and put it in the pool, and it's better. Obviously, there are logistical issues about maintaining a pool that you need to deal with, but I think you're going to see more and more of that kind of thing, because the pros are doing it. They get it. They're moving. They don't have they have a zero tolerance for off-season injuries. They have zero tolerance for training related injuries. It's not okay. You can't blow out a knee while you're practicing or while you're lifting weights and still have a job. It just doesn't work. So if you can reduce the injuries, increase the efficiency of the workout, including flexibility, and have more fun, well, good. That's a good program.
I remember the Mets had a player, I think it was Greg Jeffries, who grew up swinging a bat in the water.
Oh, well.
For the resistance. And, I think it was like his father's idea. And they said that's one of the reasons he became such a great hitter, and he had such a quick bat.
Yeah, imagine it. You can just imagine it, right? Just trying to pull that bat through the water, and then you get on land in the air and you're just like, this is easy. Bam, hitting that ball far. I imagine you could do it with golf and tennis and everything.
And they've used water to help prisoners. If you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's an experimental program that's starting to become more popular. A prison in Oregon that did some of this research, and so the prison environment is obviously not a great place for the people who work there, for the inmates, people who are incarcerated, for the families of both. There's a high level of red mind, needless to say. There's aggression. There's people who sometimes need to be put in solitary confinement. When that happens, it's horrible for everybody, and it's inhumane, but it's the way the system works. And you want to reduce injuries to the staff and to those who are incarcerated. And so the experiment looked at how blue mind could be applied in those cases. So you can start with painting walls blue, which is calming, just a calming color. But they also started putting in screens that could show water-based imagery, ocean footage, lakes and rivers. And what they found is that it helped people just calm down and hurt themselves less, require less solitary confinement, and hurt each other less. And so I look at that research and I think, okay, if it works in prisons, what are other prison-like environments? Well, sometimes your own home can feel like a prison these days.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I can recall a few places where I went to school that felt prison-like, and I know there are office buildings that are poorly designed that feel that way. So if we can apply what we've learned in literal prisons to prison-like environments, poorly designed environments perhaps, or places where just out of necessity we're stuck, say at home during a pandemic, how could you add water to your life if you're stuck at home? Of course, there's the bathtub and the shower, but what else? We talked about the audio. You can play water sounds rather than the news on the radio and listen to that a few minutes a day. It can help you sleep, but you can also put artwork. Do you have I look at the poster behind you. It's like, it's that you're looking out on a view there, and there's something about that view that just is appealing. So you can use artwork, photography, painting, abstract or literal artwork, to get yourself into a more blue mind place. You can put a small fountain on a desk. You can put a water feature in your home. They don't have to be extravagant. You can literally buy a water feature and plug it in, add a little water, and it's a fountain on your desk. My daughter has this thing. It's like an LED light thing. She plugs it in, and it looks like the surface of the ocean on the ceiling. So if she puts on ocean sound and puts that light at night on the ceiling, it's just very relaxing. And it's the antidote to, Snapchat and TikTok. It puts their minds at ease a little bit, and they can wind down. So, even if you're stuck at home, you can apply the things we're talking about.
You studied sea turtles, and you had a friend, Chewy, who used to eat sea turtles.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about the benefits of sea turtles and some of the interesting migration of sea turtles.
Yeah, well, Don Chewy Lucero is a great man. He's a stoic, elegant man. Really, he's like when Chewy shows up, he's like the astronaut of fishermen. He's got a white cowboy hat, and he always has a big belt buckle. And if he's been out fishing all day, he's definitely gets cleaned up, puts on his Western shirt, and he's just kind of a classic gentleman. And he grew up hunting and eating sea turtles, and now he's protecting them. And he's a leader, and he's very, very good at protecting sea turtles. And he had a day where he just his switch flipped. He said, "Wow, I've been part of the problem. These animals may go extinct." And he was holding a baby sea turtle in his hands, and he was part of a team that was helping release them. And he just had a moment, an epiphany, and a moment of awe and wonder. And it made sense. He said, I need to switch gears here. I need to be part of the team that makes sure these animals don't go extinct. And it wasn't work that I did specifically that accomplished that. It was the animals. It was nature itself calling him and, transforming him into a very, very effective professional at what he does. And he's great at it. He goes around to the fishing communities and helps people understand what he understands. And he said he would tell you the same story. So I was holding that baby turtle in my hand, and I looked at it and I said, wow, look at that little baby turtle in my hand, and think about where it's going, what it's got to do, and the migrations and all the challenges. And then it comes back here, and it's 300 pounds. And I eat it, it didn't make sense to him anymore. And he said, I got to make sure these animals don't disappear so that my grandkids will never know them. And so that's, I'm a marine biologist, so I studied migration, genetics. I studied what the turtles eat, what they do, how fast they grow, the barnacles that live on them, all that stuff. And I realized that nobody was going to read my research basically. All 12 people I knew on a first name basis that were interested in my research, my fellow scientists. We get together at conferences and talk to each other, and then we go back and do more. And I realized that without the behavior change component, my research was pointless. So I haven't given up on the science, but there's a science of behavior change too. And you know this well in terms of healthcare and wellness. You can research the heck out of it and put journal articles together, and they're going to sit there in the library or sit there online until you figure out how to kick them into action and get people to listen to you. So making a documentary film, doing a podcast, that reaches people in a way that scientific journals never will. Same thing with saving sea turtles. You got to put it into the hearts and minds of people somehow, and change behavior from turtle hunting and turtle consumption to turtle protection and maybe ecotourism. So people make a living saying, hey, come follow me. I'm going to show you a beautiful turtle on a beach or in the water. And so that's the flip that's happened. And it wasn't until we really realized that we're in the behavior change business, not the turtle science business. Turtles don't need to be told what to do. They know what to do. People do. And if you tell people what to do, they probably won't do it. You have to approach it very differently. And so, whether it's health and wellness or saving the ocean, it's the same basic toolkit.
You make a great point before about scientists doing research, and the research never gets to where it needs to go. The average, scientist does research in medicine. It takes 17 years for that science to translate to change the way doctors practice. So,
a long road.
Said, it's an unfortunate situation, but it's kind of the way it is. There's two things I just want to end with you on. First is, we talked about before about kids, sitting in front of a computer and not going out and into nature. And you've probably thought a lot about this, and I don't know if anyone has the answer, but how do you think we could get our kids outside and away from these digital devices that we all know are probably not doing them a lot of good, and getting them into nature, which will do them a lot of good?
Yeah, I think we need to tell a better story about nature and its benefits. And currently, we're told nature is important. Nature is biodiversity. Nature gives us ecosystem services. And we've politicized it, which is unfortunate. Nature should not be politicized. Nature is not a cause. It's our life. It's our livelihood. It's our future. It's not a cause. It's not an issue. It's not an organization. It's not a movement. Nature is us. Nature is the only thing that's keeping us alive. So I think that's part of it, just a general reframing of the conversation. But this is my what if question. Like, what if every doctor, therapist, nurse understood Blue Mind? And what if every teacher and parent understood and shared Blue Mind? What if every real estate agent out there understood Blue Mind? What if every coach and guide understood Blue Mind? Just basically, it was common knowledge to share with our kids, so that when you went to school, one of the things you learned was that if you're having a bad day, go to the water. If you're having a good day, go to the water. If you have somebody that you think you're kind of sweet on, and you might want to talk to and have a more conversation with, take them to the water. If you have a big important conversation with a colleague, do it by the water. If your brain is stuck, just really stuck, and you can't figure something out, go sit by the water. If you're a creative person and your livelihood is based on your creativity, spend more time by the water. If you're really, really sad, go to the water and be sad. What if our kids learned that just as common knowledge? Like, they graduated from high school and they knew all this stuff that we're talking about, just because they were taught it every year at a kindergarten level all the way up to a senior in high school level. They would probably do more of what we're talking about, and they would probably have an easier time saying, I'm putting the phone away, I'm jumping in the water, I'm paddling out, I'm going for a swim, I'm going to get the fishing pole, I'm going to sit there. I didn't bring my phone because it's good for this, and this, and I like those things. We don't teach it. I didn't learn any of this in school, and I went to the 24th grade, which my kids freak out about because they're like, Dad, what's wrong with you? Too much school, overeducated. But I didn't learn any of this in school. None, not a bit.
It's sad, really. I mean, this should be taught in school. It's so easy. I mean, a first grader or a kindergarten could understand this.
Yeah, and we can update the water cycle, and we can add the blue mind component. You know, water does all these things. It goes through all these forms. It cycles around the world. And hey, guess what? When it meets you, it does all of these things, not just physical, not just, you know, it's emotional benefits. If we just we can update the water cycle. It'd be fun to teach. I mean, geez, wow, if I was a teacher, I'd love to teach Blue Mind in my history class, in my art class, in my science class, in my health class. And so, you know, we need to do that. And I have to say, I can say it. I don't know how to do that, but I'm punting it to the educators of the world, to the curriculum developers, to creative people who, I mean, you and we're sitting here talking about it. So, and people are going to listen to this, and
we're going to get this podcast out all over. So people are going to hear it. Trust me. Now, I got to ask you about something that I'm very passionate about, and you know, and I guess it puts me into the red mind, maybe even the gray mind, because it's upsetting, is the plastic in the ocean and the pollution in the ocean, and the little bit, when you look at the percentage of money that's spent on cleaning up the ocean and caring about the ocean. Can you talk a little bit about that, and how did that happen with all this plastic, and how could everybody get involved to help get the oceans cleaned up?
Yeah, so we're an ocean planet. When you look at it from space, it's mostly ocean. You know, most of the life on Earth lives in the ocean. Some of it's plankton, some of it's tiny, and some of it's as big as a whale. But most of the life on our planet's oceanic. It's the source of our weather. It's the source of livelihoods and food, and we need a healthy ocean to be healthy here. Whether you realize it or not, whether it feels that way or not, it's just true. And over the past 50 years, among other threats to the ocean, we've put a lot of plastic into it. Not on purpose, not just like people said, hey, let's go put plastic in the ocean, but the ocean is downstream, and our waste disposal just all over the world is often subpar. And our production of plastic just went crazy. I mean, think about when we were kids, we got milk delivered in glass bottles to a milk box in New Jersey. That wasn't that long ago. And then they kind of said, hey, wait, maybe we can put milk in plastic. And that started, and we're like, oh, that's a little lighter, a little safer. Then everything started going into plastic. And then, you know, the cups and the silverware and the plastic straws and this and that. And then this disposable mentality that you use it once and you throw it away. So convenience and big margins basically have driven the production of plastic. And really, it's not slowing down. You know, there's a lot of people talking about it now, but plastic production is still growing. And we have our ability to manage it has not kept pace. So we've exported these products. I work in places like Indonesia, small islands with small communities, and they're getting all this plastic shipped in. They don't know what to do with it when they're done. You know, single drink cups of water. Then what? You have one quick drink of water, and then you got this plastic cup. What do you do with it? So it sits there. It gets thrown in a pile, gets thrown on the beach, goes in the ocean. Big storm comes, washes it all in. So we're seeing, those who study this every day are seeing more and more and more plastic show up where it shouldn't be. You know, it's the people who make plastic didn't say, hey, let's put our plastic inside sea turtles. Of course not. They're not evil. They're business people, and they're looking for ways to grow their business and increase the margins. And that's their driver. But we need to also meet that with responsible management. You just have to. There's no other option. And as a sea turtle biologist, I used to walk down a turtle beach, and if there was a piece of plastic, I'd pick it up and the beach was clean. Like, that's all it took. Nowadays, you spend all day, every day doing beach cleans. You come back the next day and it needs it again because it just keeps washing in. Used to be that we didn't find plastic inside turtles. And now I'd say every single sea turtle in the world will eat plastic at some point in its life. And they should eat none. There should not be plastic inside wildlife anywhere, especially the middle of the ocean. So as a problem, be direct, but also optimistic. It's going to get worse before it gets better. I put my money on humans to solve it, to come up with a better material to do the job that plastic does, a different kind of plastic, a kind of material that truly is biodegradable, that ends up in the ocean and then becomes, dissolves in a safe way, as well as switching back to smart reusables, where you bring the container back to the store and you get brand loyalty and you get a refill. Or they take the container back, they wash it, they put it through their process, but they give you more. Back when we used to bring like Coke bottles back for a nickel, the deposit on them, that worked. But the plastic industry didn't care for that. And they legislated that out. But it was a good system. So, some of these things sound old fashioned, but we can modernize reusables. And so that's
the benefit of drinking out of glass versus plastic.
That's right. And there's an aesthetic benefit. I mean, if you have, I don't care to drink say a glass of wine out of a plastic cup. I'd rather have it out of a glass,
And how much plastic are we drinking? And, like I said, I interviewed Joe Polly, I interviewed Dr. Q Collins about deuterium. I'm sure you know about that as well. So what can we do? The people that are listening to this, how can they get involved in helping to keep the oceans clean?
I don't really want to answer that question because that's not a dodge. If you're listening to this and you care the way we care, you know what to do. That's my answer. You know. No, just do it. Like, I know what to do. I don't always do the things I need to do. I need to remind myself to, keep at it. And I think that answer is more effective than me giving you a list of things you immediately forget. So
now, the blue marble,
yes.
You give lectures or you talk to people and you give them blue marbles. Explain that.
Years ago, this conversation about the ocean was just full of bad news, from plastic pollution to overfishing and climate change and poaching and whale hunting and this and that. And it was burning me out. I couldn't read my inbox because it was just like bad news. And I thought, if it's burning me out and I'm pretty fired up and this is my job, what's happening to everybody else? So I thought there's got to be a way that we get a little more positive with the solutions. And I gave a lecture at the New England Aquarium, and the screen that I was projecting on was an IMAX screen. So it was like 7 stories tall, and it was this huge auditorium. And I remember preparing for that, I thought, wow, I'm just gonna bum people out here. So I ran to the toy store and I had this idea, and I got all the blue marbles they had, this little Boston toy store. And I stood at the doorway into the IMAX theater and I gave everybody a blue marble, and everybody said, "What's this for?" And I said, "You'll find out." And truth be known, I wasn't sure what I was going to say about the blue marble. I just knew I needed to be more positive. And at the end of the lecture, the last slide, 7 stories tall image of the first photograph NASA took of Earth from space, called the Blue Marble. That was my last, sort of kind of coincidentally, but perfectly. That was the last photo on the screen. And I said, you know that blue marble I gave you when you came in, and you didn't even know who I was at the time. Pull it out of your pocket or your purse, your bag, and hold it up. And everybody sort of, held their blue marble up. And I got got a blue marble right there. It looked kind of like that one on the spine of the book. And people held them up. So that's what we look like from a million miles away. And the math was pretty close. At arm's length, that's about what we would look like if you could fly a million miles away. We're a little water planet. You go a billion miles away, we're just a pixel, as Carl Sagan would say. We're a pale blue dot. That's humbling, super humbling. And the only people who are going to have that perspective are astronauts, at least for a while now. And so I said, take your blue marble and think of someone that you want to say thank you to. Maybe brings their own bag to the grocery store, or is doing something good to protect your local waterway or making life better. And over the next week or so, I want you to pass your blue marble on and share that gratitude. Put the marble in their hand, tell them the story, and then ask them to do the same thing. And you'll make them happy, even if it's just for a minute. You might make their day, might make their year. They might just be really touched. I don't know, but it's just a recycled glass blue marble. Pass it on. Looks a little bit like an eyeball, in fact. And people did it. I got more feedback than all of my other lectures ever combined, and it was positive. And people were just like not bummed out. I did not create more red mind. I created blue mind, and it rippled. Like that one lecture in Boston rippled out, and people were sending their marbles around, and I thought, I gotta get myself some more marbles. So I contacted Marble King in West Virginia and ordered a box of them and went through those. And fast forward now, we've given away over 1 million marbles, and they have sharing built into them. When you give someone a marble, you have that conversation, you ask them to pass it on, so it keeps moving. So that 1 million marbles has probably reached tens of millions of people if people keep passing them. Not to mention people sharing their stories like we are now, or posting them on social media and telling their stories. As a result, Harrison Ford got a marble, Jane Goodall got a marble, the great Sylvia Earle got a marble, the Pope and the Dalai Lama both got marbles. It just kind of is fun. And it's this simple little, there is no organization, there is no budget, there is no master plan. It's just this fun thing that you can't turn off. That has become the symbol of Blue Mind, is that let's share these ideas. Let's share our love of water. Whether you're sharing it with a group of doctors or nurses or therapists or veterans or first responders or teachers or architects, let's share what we know here, make it common knowledge, share it with gratitude. And that, I think, is a better strategy than the one we've been trying. So that's what the blue marble is all about.
Well, what a beautiful concept, and really a wonderful concept. And I want to thank Dr. Nichols for joining me today. And pick up your book. I want everybody to see your book, the Blue Mind book. Please go and order Dr. Wallace J. Nichols, Blue Mind. It's a fantastic read, and it'll make you feel good. And that's what it's about, feeling good. So thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure. Really great to chat with you and hear about your work and be a small part of what you're doing over there. I really appreciate it. So important.
And thanks again. And this is Dr. Kerry Gelb for Open Your Eyes. Until next time, thank you. Fitting multifocal contact lenses presents a big opportunity to meet patient needs while growing your practice. Alcon is your partner not only with our innovative portfolio, but through e-learning. Learn to enhance your multifocal strategy today with the Alcon Experience Academy.
Since I bought Safe For You, my dad makes me clean his boat.
Es natural y es un buen producto.
Every time I go back to school, my mom always makes sure that I have my Safe For You products. I bring extra, and my roommates certainly don't mind.
It's a good thing I had Safe For You to clean up after this little guy.
When my hands get dry, I like to wash them with Safe For You.
And most importantly, the reason why I buy Safe For You is because it's safe for me and you.